Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. And this week we are in the year of the Dresden, where we are finishing up our conversation on
Grave Peril, which
Did I
is
just have
not
to
about graves anymore. It started out being about graves and ghosts, and then not so much about that.
Laura, it could have been about graves. Was it?
I guess
No.
Vampires are still in coffins.
That's not a grave.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a cemetery at one point.
It's not called Harry Dresden Coffin Peril.
Yeah, it took a detour from what I thought it was doing, and I was disappointed because I'm not a vampire girly.
I was disappointed because it felt like the plot changed with Jim
quickly.
Butcher's moods, and
Very
sometimes
quickly.
One thing added up and sometimes another thing added up. But before we dive into
and
that,
then I really wanted Loup-Garous back in the mix,
which is pretty impressive.
I can't believe I'm saying that.
I know. But before we dive into what I kind of find to be pretty messy, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Still watching The Acolyte.
I need to catch up.
The penultimate episode was really good.
Oh, good.
I'm actually impressed by that show. I think they're doing a lot of good things, and my only problem is I worry that they're going to like kind of leave the show on maybe like a cliffhanger or
and they're going to be like, in 5 years, you're going to get another episode.
Or they just won't renew it and it'll just be a 1-season thing. So I'm a little worried that that's going to be the case because this is a mystery type show.
Yeah.
But if possible, it would be cool to have more of this storyline. I would really like that. But penultimate episode was really good, and we get kind of a different viewpoint of what actually happened in a previous episode, and I dig that, honestly. Like,
yeah,
I like that we are presented with one narrative and kind of told this is what happened, and then we are able to form these opinions for several weeks, and everyone's like, well, this one's bad and that one's good. But then actually we learned that things were not quite what we thought.
I like that. We thought. Good.
And I appreciate that shows are willing to kind of provide that type of look and are willing to be like, you know what, we're going to take the time and literally show the exact same sequence of events from a different angle just to provide context to the not readers, the viewers.
Yeah.
And I think it's well worth it because it kind of opens you up to what could be a more complicated situation than we originally thought. And I like that. I wish that more shows were able to do that, you know what I mean? Where we see multiple sides instead of just being presented with like this character's view of what happened and having to form our own opinion. So I really have high hopes for the finale this Tuesday. Don't let me down, Acolyte. And also, Disney, please don't leave it on a cliffhanger because that will suck. That'll be the worst part, honestly, is if they leave it on a cliffhanger or, like I said, leave it kind of open-ended and then they don't get a season 2. Because many of these Star Wars shows are not getting multiple seasons, which stinks.
Yeah,
The Mandalorian got 3 seasons. Third one, not as good. And Andor is getting a second season, which I'm excited about, but still like very nervous because the first season was so good. So fingers crossed that they don't do me wrong here.
Don't do Laura dirty.
Don't do it to me, Disney. Don't. But another thing I watched on Disney Plus was Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, what did we think?
Watched it, Hannah? You saw it in theaters, right?
No, I did not watch Thor: Love and Thunder in theaters. I watched that when it came to Disney because I think by then I had hit some of my Marvel fatigue, so I kind of
burnout.
And I think it had come out still like when the pandemic wasn't in full swing, but it was like pretty bad. So like you still had to be careful, you know, things like that. So,
I can't remember when it came out, but I think it might have been a few years ago, honestly.
Oh yeah, I mean it was definitely a few years. It was 2022, so I guess the pandemic hadn't been in full swing, but it was just like not something I like was really gung ho to go see. So yeah,
honestly, I really liked it.
Oh,
I
really?
thought it was a ton of fun.
I didn't really like it, but that's fine.
I thought it was campy and I thought it was cute and doing a lot of cutesy things that I thought was it was a lot better than the second Thor movie. And I really appreciated it because we had people who were dealing with change that there was more emotion involved rather
Yeah,
than all of the we're so tough, we'll just smash this or do that. And I feel like a lot of times Marvel neglects to talk about the actual feelings of characters
yeah,
and how people are dealing with difficult situations and all of the things that they've been through.
right.
And this one, I think, definitely tried to tackle that, and it did it in a very cutesy spin that probably didn't work for all of the dude bros that love Marvel. But too bad about you because I liked it,
That's
and
good. As
I
long as
I need more of the fun stuff. So because I have a difficult time with a lot of the early Marvel and this is my reward. I've made it all this time through all of this Marvel just to be rewarded with fun things like Shang-Chi and Thor Love and Thunder.
I do love Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi is the
I,
best by far.
yeah, I think when it comes to like Thor Love and Thunder, I wish it had a little bit better story arc. Like it felt like they were dealing with a lot of good ideas, but like when it
It
got
was
down to
so
the
fun though,
actual,
like so
yeah,
funny. And I don't think a lot of Iron Man is funny, like
no,
the way
that's
that
fair.
I'm missing a lot of the jokes, I guess, of some of the early stuff that people love. Like, come at me. It's not funny. Yeah, Tony Stark's not funny, just mean, just rude. But Thor Love and Thunder had a lot of funny moments and made me laugh a lot. And I really liked it. It was fun.
I also think we have to place this in time. I was about 5 months sober when this came out, and I think I watched it, and I think I was not in a good place, so I probably like was a little bit
Wouldn't
just
say it's not my favorite Marvel movie by
no.
far, but Shang-Chi is my favorite Marvel movie, I think.
I think
And
that's probably one of the better ones. So
yeah, I think that's easily the best one. But I think that Thor Love and Thunder is a movie where I'm like, yeah, I would watch that again. Like I think it's fun. And love all the bright colors. I love how there's the storytelling that happens from what's his name? Oh my gosh. That has like a real like kind of soft-spoken voice that we
oh
get
yeah.
him in.
Well, his voice is Taika Waititi. It's Korg.
Korg, yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
no
I
problem.
I love him. He is so funny and cute. And yeah, that it was just a fun movie and I would definitely watch it again. It's something that I could easily see becoming like a comfort like background movie, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Where
could
it's
see
like I
that.
don't need to pay attention to this, but I kind of like the music. I kind of because it also was one of my favorite bands like permeated throughout the Guns N' Roses. I love
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses so much. Like, I'm one of their top listeners on Spotify apparently, which is
Oh gosh.
kind of a ridiculous fact about me. But there was so much Guns N' Roses in this movie too, which was a lot of fun. And I just appreciate how zany and absurd it was, even for Marvel. And I just really liked it. It's something that, yeah, I can see myself rewatching for sure.
That's good. Hey, I'm glad you finally are getting into Marvel movies you actually like.
I
So,
mean, it's taken quite a while. I liked
yeah.
Wakanda Forever as well. That
Oh,
one
I really liked Wakanda
was
Forever.
emotional for me. I did get emotional watching that one. I also really like Black Panther. That's maybe my second favorite Marvel movie. Trying to
Yeah.
think of other Marvel
I did
movies that
like
I
Thor
like.
Ragnarok a lot.
Yeah,
That's
Thor
the third
Ragnarok
one.
was okay. Um, I would say that's more towards the top of my list. I will
Yeah.
say that the Avengers Endgame and Infinity War are okay, but entirely too long.
Those are really long movies.
They're like 3 hours each.
I know.
It took
It's
me entire weeks to get through them because they're so long.
I know. They really were like, hey, this is what you've been waiting for. You have to remember that was an end of an era, and I think it was a good era to end.
Yeah, thank God
But
they
they
ended it
really
because nobody could stay awake long enough to watch all of them.
hot takes.
I also like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies quite a bit, but I
Yeah.
also like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and
Look,
I like
here
Andrew Garfield too. So
you
I
and
don't
I
know.
have gone on record on this podcast that we like all the Spider-Man
Yeah,
movies, and I also love saying Spider-Man because of the I think
all
I've
the Spider-Man.
Not just that, but it's one of my favorite Friends jokes. I'm sure I've brought it up on the podcast before. There's a day where like Phoebe is like, "Why isn't it Spiderman?" And she's like, like you have Goldman, and he's like,
Hmm.
"He's a Spider-Man. Like there's a Mr. Goldman, but it's not his last name. Like there's no Goldman." And so I always think, so I always like to say the Spider-Man movies, because
Yeah, I
I
love
think that
that.
that is funny. So I love all the Spider-Man movies, and yeah, good job, guys.
Also,
So
Captain America, Civil War
that one's a
is
good
another
one.
one of my favorites, I think. I that one might even be right under Black Panther.
Yeah.
I
I
think that
would
might be like my number three. And Guardians of the Galaxy is the first one, is just very campy and fun, and I like
the
that as
second one
well.
kind of goes off the rails a little bit,
The
but yeah,
second
the
one,
first one.
there's throwing like playing catch in space with my dad, Kurt Russell, is too much for me. I'm out on
Yeah.
that. I'm out on that.
And I love Kurt Russell. Laura and I are both fans of the classic movie Overboard.
I
So
love
I
Overboard.
love Overboard so much. Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell just hanging out together. Come
Also,
on.
I listened to Goldie Hawn on Conan O'Brien's podcast, and I was like really touched by how she was talking about her relationship with Kurt Russell and how it was just like really such a unique way that they got together, how she kind of met his mom first just in
Oh,
passing and all these things. Like she had asked somebody for directions at Disneyland and it was his mom,
oh, jeez.
and it was just like such a weird way that they ended up like continually crossing paths kind of, and then eventually got together. And she mentioned how they are very different, but the two of
Yeah.
them, they have different like beliefs and stuff like that, and all these things that could pull them apart in a relationship. But she said that they really just maintain that they're committed to their family and their love for each other. And I was like, oh, that's so touching. Like only certain old people can say things like that, and it, it
Well,
gets me.
because apparently Kurt Russell's a libertarian, so I'm glad that Goldie
Mm.
Hawn is not a libertarian.
Okay, so she's on
So,
the right
yeah,
right path,
hopefully.
but well, we
Libertarian
hope.
doesn't
Well,
mean
I guess we don't know.
let's hope so.
I
I
guess we
also
don't know.
think it's very fun to like listen to if you listen to Kate Hudson talk about like Kurt Russell, because like
Hmm.
she and her
Oliver, her brother.
yeah, they kind of talk about how they do not have a relationship with their birth dad, but
Yeah.
Kurt is very much like their dad, and they see him, in a very specific way. So I think that that is always good. And Kurt Russell's son Wyatt Russell was in the Marvel
He
universe and
was,
Falcon
yeah,
and the
he
Winter Soldier.
was not
Uh,
great, and I hated him, but it wasn't his fault. It was the
I
writing.
mean, I always think it was supposed to be the character's fault in
Yeah.
the season that like no one knew was about race, even though they pointed it out every single second. It's like people do not
How did they
understand
not
nuance.
understand that?
People kept being like, he's not
Falcon and the
supposed to
Winter Soldier
be.
was all about it.
I know. It was like, no, it's about how they didn't want a black man to be Captain America. That's
Yeah,
it. Like he would have been had
absolutely.
he been white. That's the whole point.
And the new Captain America movie is coming out, Captain America
Mhm.
Brave New World with Anthony Mackie, hot. And I love
Answer
Anthony
Mary, yeah.
Mackie. He's so attractive.
Oh,
Oh
I
my
can say
gosh.
that Goldie Hawn, they do not say her political views, but she's a Buddhist and she supports the LGBT communities.
I mean, we don't need
Uh,
to know.
no,
But I
sorry.
was just
I
I
went
was
on
just
a click
moved
hole.
by how
Uh,
she was like, yeah, there's all these things that could tear us apart, but we still end up in a great relationship, and we still commit because we're committed to our love and our family. And I was like, oh, that's really touching.
no. I also think that there's been like, so there are certain celebrities where there are always rumors that they have like a semi-open marriage to open marriage, and Goldie Hawn
Mm,
and Kurt
mhm.
Russell were one of them. And I think like
I could see that.
good for them if that is what makes their marriage happy and healthy.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. I think people, it's the same with like Jada Pinkett Smith and
Oh, and Will Smith,
Will
yeah.
Smith. And it's like, yeah, who cares if that's what makes their marriage work? And they're both like, well, we commit to each other no matter
Sure.
what. It's like, yeah, great. We need to talk more. I wish people were more open about it because it shows like there's all different types of
Hmm.
relationships that work. But I also understand like that would probably be hard to be open when you're like in the spotlight so much because then
Sure.
you just have
And
people
also,
coming
I
through.
do think there's maybe a little too much pressure put on celebrities to like share private details
Yeah,
about
that's fair.
themselves. Like, I know that it's one of those things like this sounds really stupid, but whenever I hear about like a celebrity who has a certain chronic illness or something like that, and they're like outward about it, and for me, it was especially moving when I found out that Bindi Irwin had
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis, and she was talking about it. And now she's been, attending galas and raising money for endometriosis. Her family's been very outspoken. The Irwins seem like a fantastic,
Yes.
kind family in general. And Bindi did not owe anyone any kind of
No.
explanation to her health or why she doesn't have more kids or anything like that. But it was very moving to me, especially as someone who has endometriosis,
Mm-hmm.
to hear that there's someone else who other people love and care about that was going through this, and that in my mind I was like, oh well, now that people know that Bindi Irwin has this, they're going to start to care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of pressure put on celebrities to reveal, like, not just health information but certain things about themselves in order to like get people to care about things, whether it's political or
Yeah.
what have you. And honestly, it's not their responsibility to kind of be like the flag
No, but I
bearer for
think
this or that,
I
and
guess
that's kind
it's
of hard to put that on people too, because their celebrities are also very flawed
I guess
people.
what I'm more talking about is like I think that there's also a lot of like public image put on people where it's like they had the successful marriage, and I wish like some people, and like obviously it's a choice, would be more open if they
Hmm.
have a non-traditional type of relationship, because that does it, like you're right, it normalizes it for people.
Yeah.
And I think like obviously it's always a choice with someone, but I'm just like I wish people would know that like not everyone's going to judge them, and like being more open about it allows other people to be more open about it, because I don't.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
getting at the same thing, just coming at it from different angles, where
Yeah.
it's also a thing. Like, I know that for me personally, just like, even I have no kind of platform or anything like that, but it's been just a difficult journey to even like open up about my chronic illness and
Hmm.
my infertility. And I'm slowly doing it, but it takes a lot. And so, and you do worry about like the ways that people will perceive you, these type
Hmm.
of things. And it's just because like society is not quite there yet in certain
Hmm.
ways, and it's a scary thing to do. So also, I can see how if they are in that type of situation, how they might choose to keep certain things, kind of concealed. And it is, I know people like hate when they're like, oh, you're so brave for doing this or that or whatever. And it's like, no, it is a brave thing to do, to open up about specifics of yourself, whether that be like your decisions, your health, your sexuality, what have you. These are brave things because it's a lot to overcome, just even your internal issues that you have with yourself, to admit things to others or to share about yourself.
Yeah. I can see that. I don't know. I guess I agree with you to the extent of like I think it is brave for many people. I guess sometimes I look at things a little bit differently, where I think people shouldn't have to feel brave. They should be able to kind of own their own. Like I think it's more like I think that there is good in ownership of certain things, and not having to answer to other people, or feeling
Yeah,
brave, or
I
feeling things
I
like
just
that.
feel like
So,
I'm thinking specifically of like infertility. It's a very like difficult thing to just like admit, and then also the way that society treats infertility is very bad. So it's hard to like overcome those type of stigmas and things that people will think about you and say to you in order to like be brave and talk. I say brave because
yeah.
that's, I can't think of another word at the moment, but like to even just talk about things regarding your health and your infertility, I think is difficult for a lot of people because there's a lot of stigma, and people don't talk about women's health, people don't talk about infertility, people don't talk about miscarriages. There's all these things that are not talked about. They're considered quote unquote taboo, and it does mess with your mind when
Hmm.
you are going through these things. And it's hard to just be like, oh yeah, I'm taking control of this part of me, because you feel like a lot of the control has already been taken away. So I don't know. And again, different situations, but
Yeah,
it's
because I guess I look at it more as like how people speak to me about like being an alcoholic, like, and
sure.
I think
Yeah,
that
and you can't
yeah,
like
and
cookie
I
cutter these
yeah,
situations ever. And also it's different, just different people too, because
yeah.
some people are going to, you know, internalize things a little more than others.
Hmm.
But yeah, Thor Love and Thunder, I enjoyed.
Oh, good.
And yeah, I'm trying to think of what the next Marvel movie in the lineup. I think it's like Ant-Man one, like
Uh,
Ant-Man Quantumania or whatever it is. And
I hate Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I actually kind of liked that one.
did you? Okay. Ant-Man and the
Yeah,
Wasp was very unforgettable to me.
it was
Or
very
very
unforget.
for
Oh,
I
no,
shouldn't
no,
say
no. That one
it
is
was very forgettable.
that
Not
one.
unforgettable. It was
I
very
could
forgettable.
not tell you who the big bad in Ant-Man and the Wasp was. I
No,
have
no,
no
no
idea.
idea. I forgot everything
Um,
about that movie. The same with, I shouldn't say the same with, but I also was just like, Black Widow was not that memorable to
no.
me. Like, I know David Harbour was in there with a bad accent, and so was Florence Pugh, and she was making fun of like the poses.
Yeah,
Could I tell you what else happened in that movie? Likely not,
no. I
unfortunately.
also remember that it had what's the actress's name who's been in a bunch of amazing stuff. I remember her. I think she was in the Mummy movies. Um,
I'm not
she was the
remembering.
mommy in those movies.
Okay.
And not the mummy in the mummy, the mommy in
The
Black
mommy,
Widow.
the
Rachel
MOM.
Weisz.
Okay.
Rachel Weisz, I remember that she was in Black Widow.
Okay.
I did not
I was
care.
kind of disappointed that that movie wasn't like a lot better. I didn't think it was horrible, I don't think,
I
if I'm
kind of
remembering right. But I kind of wish it would have been a lot better seen as that's like one of the first movies that was like centered around Scarlett Johansson's character who's been in this for so long.
I know. I think it doesn't help that I don't really like Scarlett Johansson all that much. Like,
That's
I
fair.
don't think she's ever done anything wrong. She's just not my bag of a human
Sure.
being. Um, I think that it's an own personal taste, but like, yeah, Scarlett Johansson has never been like, oh, she's amazing. And so a movie about her character who I feel like they had already done so dirty,
Hmm.
um, it was interesting. So, you know,
And also like Madam Web, we loved that one.
I mean, Madam Web, listen to it on our Patreon. We
Madam
gave it
Web,
10 out of
no
10
notes.
stars. No notes.
No
Sydney
notes.
Sweeney had the most expressive lines that I've ever.
She was excellent. I
It was perfect. Yeah.
I don't
So
know what's going on.
why are you trying to help us? I don't know.
I
I
don't
just
know.
let me
I
fly to
don't
South
know
America
what's going
and
on.
come back within like what 2 day period?
Who even knows? It made
How
very
did
little
she get into
sense.
the foster care system in New York? I
I
do not know.
I can't figure it all out. Like that's yeah, there's a reason it says in association with Marvel.
An association.
Not just Marvel.
Oh my gosh.
They
So,
couldn't do it.
yeah.
But Hannah, I also read something.
Woo
Woo! I read
woo.
something. And I think you have also read it. People We
Oh.
Meet on Vacation by Emily
Oh
Henry.
my gosh. Laura's diving into the Emily Henry verse,
Back in Emily
guys.
Henry. Because I read
She's
Happy
just,
Place last year.
yes, you
Not a
did.
fan.
You were not a fan. It was
Not
not
a
for
fan of that
Laura.
one. But People We Meet on Vacation, I really, really liked.
I wondered if you would like that one more, because it was my least favorite one of all of
Was it? You
those.
liked Happy Place more than this one? I'm surprised.
Yeah, I think I did prefer Happy Place to this one. I really liked like the friendships in Happy Place, and
Mhm.
I liked like I really liked the back and forth of like I don't know, something about people we meet on vacation. You talk about what you loved about it, and then I can give
Oh
my
no, I'm not
lowdown.
like overly attached to this book.
No,
I
no,
read
no,
it
I didn't think
literally
you
to help
would.
me get out of a slump
Yeah,
because
but
I was
you
like,
liked it.
I need something to help me get out of a slump, something that's light, and this fit the bill. And I really think that the character Poppy stood out to me
Hmm.
a lot. I just loved her personality. I thought that the relationship between her and Alex was very well done. I didn't like towards the end where it started to get into like the event that they were getting into and then the miscommunication that they have towards the end
One
because
of the
there's always
dumbest
a
things in the world. Yeah.
miscommunication. I always hate the miscommunications that happen in romances, but theirs was very dumb.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy that. But if you subtract that miscommunication, I really would I think if you subtract that miscommunication, I probably would have given the book 5 stars. Like
Hmm.
I thought it was really, really good. But Poppy especially was so fun and I just really was drawn to that character by how she interacted with Alex and how she brought out so much of him. And I just appreciate when relationships are portrayed in a way where it seems realistic, and that seemed realistic to me because I was picking up on like a lot of that. Like, I know that I'm a very introverted person, but I feel like within my own relationship that I'm maybe the bubblier one who tries to get my husband to do zany things or whatever, and it seemed like a lot of that was coming through with Poppy and Alex, and that she kind of pushed him to do and try things. And I'm like, I kind of get, like, obviously it's a very different story with me and my husband. We don't have the same kind of story. We weren't friends first type
Hmm.
situation for years like they were. But I do get certain vibes of my own relationship in that. And I just thought Poppy was such a fun character. And I love her humor. And I feel like I also have that kind of self-deprecating humor that she has, and the way that she tries, like, in an awkward situation, just use humor to cover things up, like that seems relatable. No notes.
Yeah.
I get that. But yeah, I don't think that because of the miscommunication and the ending, it wrapped up in a way that I was like, okay, I like the way that it ended, but at the same time, it was just like the few like 50 pages, before that, where it was like once they got to the bachelorette party or the bachelor party, and things started to kind of get rolling finally, and we were out of the trip that they were on, I was like, okay, well, now I'm kind of getting taken out of this a bit. And that's what bumped me down to 4 stars, I think. But if that would have been removed in the miscommunication, I probably would have given it 5 stars.
Well, good to know. So for people we meet on vacation, I really hated that there was really no reason for them not to be together. And I totally get where like people are at different points in life, people are at things,
It just
but
seemed like they would never
and
hit their moment, is the way I took it.
small spoilers for the book. I really hated that he got a vasectomy in the book.
Okay.
When he was with a partner who wanted children, because Poppy had a health scare and had decided she didn't want children. I think at that point, when you are not considering your actual partner, for the maybe that is your best friend, I really disliked that.
Sure.
It really rubbed me the wrong way. Like
Do you
as
think that
someone,
they actually, like, at that point, do you think he was actually considering her still as like a viable option though? Because it seemed like
well,
in the flashbacks, the way that I kind of took it, like, I get it that he got a vasectomy and that's not great to not talk to your partner about it. But at the same time, it seemed almost like, I'm not even going to mention the vasectomy part, but just like whenever they were with other people, it didn't seem like they thought that they even had an opportunity with that person. You know what I mean? That's the way
yeah.
that I kind of took it.
I mean, maybe, but like that's still, I don't know. He still said he was like considering her when he did it. And so I think that that's just kind of inappropriate to be with someone who, when you're thinking about another person that much, I'm like, you need to break up with that other person. Like, and then he kind of like went back and forth
But
with
they
that
were such
person still.
close friends, though. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you
Yeah.
have a friend that you're that close with, even, I think maybe it's just the fact that they could be romantic partners that maybe makes it worse. Because I'm thinking, like, if this was a friendship and they didn't have the possibility of being romantic partners and something like that happened, would we have the same reaction? You know what I mean? I I'm unsure.
I don't know. I just felt like it put a really bad taste in my mouth with that book.
That's
And
fair.
they never really seemed like there was a reason for them not to be together other than like, oh, well, and that's, I
I just took
guess,
it as like a timing thing. It always seemed like the timing was off.
yeah.
I know that people
Those,
say that about things where like we never hit it right. We never hit the right timing. And I I do think that makes sense, honestly, because
yeah.
there's been like times where like I've like had a crush on somebody and they've been with someone, and then maybe they've been available and I've been with someone. So I do think that does happen.
Yeah, I think it happens. I think sometimes I just like wish then, I don't know, the will they won't they kind of bothered me in that book, especially when it came to his girlfriend. I just really don't like it when you read in books or in like real life where someone like I really don't like the term, like you and I know this, I'm writing a book about it, but like the term the one that got away. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well if they got away for that long, fine, but then like maybe it means that you shouldn't be with the person you're with if you really think that much about a person, you know?
I think
Um,
that's fair. I think I just interpreted it differently.
yeah, and
And
I
we can
just
have
yeah.
different interpretations of it.
Yeah, so that one just didn't work out as well for me. So, yeah, and I mean, I liked it. I think I still gave it
Hmm.
4 stars, but out of all of her books, it was the one that kind of rubbed me the
Interesting.
wrong way, the most. And it was definitely the vasectomy of it all. I thought that was like just really inconsiderate of his. I felt really bad for the ex-girlfriend in that entire book where I was like, well, she
Hmm.
deserves a lot better than these people. And then like even like again, huge spoilers for people we meet on vacation, please jump 2 minutes. But like Poppy has to talk to this woman. And I was like, please leave her alone. Like at this point, you guys need to leave her alone. This is so mean to do to a human being. Like I really disliked
I
that
mean,
they had
I
that
will say that
character.
these type of things kept happening on both of their ends. Not it happened to her a couple times because he kept getting back together with her. They kept, and
Hmm.
I am someone like in my real life, this sounds terrible, but I am definitely the person like if I break up with someone, we're done. Like it doesn't, I don't get back
Yeah.
together with them. I'm not willing to give it another try. And I haven't done that. But I know that in this book, Alex and I think her name was Sarah, they repeatedly would break up and then get
Hmm.
back together and get break up and get back together. And it was often because Poppy was a contentious part of their relationship. And there had been nothing up until that point to make it seem like there was a romantic thing there, just that they were very close. But I
Right.
can see how that would feel threatening.
Yes.
Um, if you were considering that they are all heterosexual in that situation and they were very close. But I also just feel like Poppy had similar situations with Alex that were happening with her boyfriends too, but it was almost like it was just like they kind of wrote it off as like Poppy's boyfriends were kind of artistic and
Yeah.
flighty, and so they wouldn't care about this. And it's like, well, we don't know that for sure.
Right.
So I don't know. I
Yeah.
I guess it didn't bother me as much, and I was very into their like
I
finally it worked out.
I thought you were going to like that one a lot more. And I think like that's the best part about Emily Henry is certain books speak to people a whole lot more than
Mhm.
other books. And like I obviously love Emily Henry. Every book she reads, I or writes, I read in like 2 days. So I think People We Meet on Vacation was really good. I think that it's the last place for me because of like I felt really bad for the girlfriend. And sometimes I'm like,
Sure.
well, I wish people would like that's my thing where I'm like, okay, well then go to more therapy if you're gonna treat someone like that.
I'll
Like
also say though, like I've been watching a lot of How I Met Your Mother as like my background
oh God,
show,
yeah.
and nothing can be as bad as Ted Mosby, it seems.
No, I know. I have also
He
been.
is terrible.
Yep, he is a terrible person. I can't believe how much he was supposed to be the love interest.
Oh my gosh, he's so rotten. It's
Yeah.
incredibly frustrating in the way that we're supposed to sympathize with him. Like, really?
Hmm.
No.
Yep, I know.
So I that may have skewed some of my opinions on people we meet on vacation too, because it was just like,
Can't be as
but
bad as Ted
at least they
Mosby,
weren't pulling a Ted Mosby,
right?
because
So,
that was awful. I also
yeah.
think though that Emily Henry has a very good writing style where it's very casual, but at the same time the prose is really good where it draws you in like a movie. And I
Yeah.
don't know how to describe that in any other way, where it's like it's beautiful and it makes you feel something, where
Yes.
she's talking about like the title People We Meet on Vacation. As you start to read along, it becomes more and more meaningful because you're learning that the people that they met along the way was what drew them to the vacations and made them so special,
Yeah.
and that it's not one of those where it was like we're working in the movie title type situation, but it still did because it was such a very lyrically written book. But at the
Right.
same time, it's very casual. She writes her characters in a way that I feel like I could just have a conversation with these people because they seem very normal. They
Hmm.
don't seem like even if they are like fancy, doctors or what have you for their jobs, they seem to be down to earth and normal people, which I
Right.
appreciate because sometimes characters do not come off that way. They come off as very uh, distant that you can't relate to them as much. And even if you're reading a romance and enjoying it, or any kind of book and enjoying it, if it kind of holds you back from getting totally immersed in the story and connecting with the characters if you're not able to find their voice and relate to them a little more. And I
That
think
is
that
true.
she has a knack for making the characters seem relatable and
Hmm.
accessible in a
Yeah.
way that I have not encountered too much actually. Like I can't think of many other books where you're able to just kind of dive in with the characters like this and at the same time still have that overarching really lyrical and draws you in moment like you get in a movie.
Right. No, and I do, I mean, I'm a huge Emily Henry stan. You know this about me. I do, and I think you're right. Like all of her books are very cinematic and they're all rom-coms. Like I don't think that they're like heavy
Sure. Oh
romance
no.
novels. And
No,
I
they're
think that
very
that's
funny.
why people adore them is because they're more
I really
rom-com than
liked the
anything
joke
else.
in People We Meet on Vacation where they're talking about Alex's grandma and they said how she married a priest and that's when they became Protestants. That made me
It's
laugh so
good.
much.
Yeah.
But there's moments like that throughout where there's a lot of humor in that book, and I think that helped a lot too with my enjoyment of it. It was just that Poppy was so funny and had a lot of self-deprecating humor that
Yeah.
I really appreciate.
No, I actually thought you might like People We Meet on Vacation the best out of all of her books because I thought that one might
Interesting.
speak to things you like the most. So I wondered
Mhm.
if that was going to be the case. I'm glad that
We'll
it was.
see. I have, I guess, two more left, right? Uh, Funny Stories, the one that just came out, and then
Hmm.
Book Lovers.
Yes. Um, and Book Lovers is
Are they
Veronica's
both about
favorite.
authors?
So Book Lovers is about two a publicist and an editor.
Okay.
And then I really liked Book Lovers because it was very much like I know Veronica loved the character. She felt very seen by the character. I loved it because I really liked the sisterly relationship in it. I thought it was very cute.
Okay.
Um, and just like wanting different things and things like that. And then yeah, and then Funny Story I think is like the most enjoyable one I've read out of hers where I'm just like this
Interesting.
is a good time and I liked it so much and yeah, good job
And
Emily
what's
Henry.
who are those people and who are the
So
characters in that one?
Funny Story is about a woman whose fiance leaves her a few weeks before their wedding
Okay.
for his best friend. So a little bit of a
Okay.
switcheroo on the people we've been on vacation of it
Okay.
all. Um, and she has to move in to the best friend's ex's apartment for a little bit of a
Okay.
living scenario. So it's like forced proximity, two people
Mm-hmm.
like, and one of them is a librarian. And then she has no idea what he does for a living, which is also very funny.
Okay.
So yeah, so I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I like that. I
Yeah, it's very
I need
cute.
to read more romance because I feel like I when I pick up a romance, I pick up something that's popular, honestly, because I just don't know where to go and it it seems more accessible to just get one of these popular titles that's at the library because that's what I
Mhm.
did with this one. I was like, here it is, Emily Henry. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
I
why
need
not?
something to get me out of a slump, and it worked.
Right?
But I I do think that I need to like give romances across the board more of a chance because generally I do like them. Like I love The
Yeah.
Charm Offensive. I love Kiss Her Once for Me. So I and I like a lot of Christina Lauren books too. So
Yeah.
Talia Hibbert, I've loved all of hers that I've read. So I think I just need to kind of try and branch out a little more and try some different books because I was going to make a comment that I was like, the worst thing about Emily Henry's books is that they all seem a little bit like the people are super privileged. But
Yeah.
then I was like, but that's maybe just a me problem not finding the right books that I'm absolutely positive that there are romances out there that depict people that I'm wanting to see. I'm just not finding them and I need to do my homework. So,
I think that's very fair. But yeah, I don't know. I
but
think
what have you
yeah.
been reading and watching?
So for watching, I had to buy a car this week, and do a lot of other things. So it's been a very stressful week for me. I'm
She's
also
been watching her
doing,
car.
Yeah, I've been watching my new car. I've been looking at websites to look for new cars. Was going back and forth on that. I trying to think. I was watching my invites for my wedding because those had to go out this week. So it's been
Hmm.
a little bit of a hellacious week. I was also traveling this weekend to see my sister. So she asked what shows we like to watch, and so we turned on Taskmaster because of course we
Oh,
did.
nice. Yeah.
And I rewatched series one. Laura, this is on YouTube. You could like get like a YouTube app on your computer and just all of the series are up there. They're
I
so
don't think you
good.
realize how much I do watch YouTube. I
Yes.
watch ASMR so much.
Okay, so you could be watching Taskmaster, and they are so funny. Like, even going back to season one, there's just so many random tasks that you're like, this is hilarious. And how did they come up with this? And um, in the first couple episodes of Taskmaster, it's like one of the funniest things where their task is to like go into a room and eat melon as fast as they can within 60 seconds.
Hmm.
And one of them like is like, oh, I better have a utensil. And so then he just like nicely slices it open and is just eating it with a spoon. And they're all like, oh, there was no urgency. You had a minute and you're just like doing that. And then a woman walks in and she like walks in and she goes, oh, so it's just a full melon. And she like didn't think about the fact that it wouldn't be cut up for her.
So
And
she
so
just took a bite into it.
so she like had to go get a knife and like by the time she like barely got any in her mouth because like it was a minute and they were like I'm shocked. And she was like, I thought it would be like a watermelon buffet. And they're like, what
Oh
are
my
you
gosh.
talking about? And then two other people just like one of them smashes it on the floor and they're like, you knew you had to eat it. Why did you smash it on the floor? And like it's a lab, quote unquote.
Hmm.
And he's like, honestly, never in a million years did I think it was going to smash like that. I thought I would be fighting for my life to get this watermelon, and it just exploded everywhere.
Oh my
All I could
gosh.
think was, I've made a mistake. Um, so I really enjoyed that show. I'm already on season like I think 7 or 8.
Oh wow. How
Um,
many seasons are there?
there's like 15, and there's
Oh
also
wow.
like New Zealand Taskmaster and yeah, so I'm a big fan. Apparently they tried it in America and it didn't work because
Hmm.
we suck at nuanced humor. But um um so
What else is new?
I know it there yeah, there's been 17 seasons. So yeah, I really like it. I think it's very good. So we watched that and my sister and her husband died. And you know how you like tell people who don't watch a lot of like television like British humor television, you're like, oh, this might
Hmm.
go terribly wrong. And like I was watching the first episode with them and I was like, maybe it's not as funny in the first seasons. And they were dying. And I was like, okay, good. Like this is
It's so
actually better than I
validating when
thought.
somebody likes a show that you recommend.
Especially when you have to like sit there and watch it with them because you're like really putting yourself out there, like, oh, we watched this show and we think it's funny.
That's like
And
me watching Abbott Elementary with my parents, like just staring at them like, did you laugh? Did you laugh?
right? And like, oh gosh, it's just so funny just watching people do random tasks where you're like, how did they come up with this?
Hmm.
Um, and it's like there's one where they had to do something in reverse so that like when they played it back, it looked cool, you know? And one of the
Okay.
guys did something and he was like, honestly, I walked away from that and I was super proud and it was absolute
Oh.
gobshite.
Oh,
But they're all comedians, so they all get it.
sure.
Like, it's so funny. I love that show so much. So going back to season one was a ton of fun to kind of like see everything be built back up. Do you ever do that with shows where you're just like, I watched this so many times. Let me go see like how it all started. And you're like, wow, that was like a unique experience.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I rewatch the same like 7 comedy series that I love, and if I start at a certain season, I'm like, oh yeah, this really takes me back. But honestly, I feel like I will often skip a lot of first
Mm,
seasons of
yeah.
the shows that I love just because I feel like I have to get into the groove a little more.
Got it. Well, also, I said I've also been watching How I Met Your Mother. I've watched How I Met Your Mother more than any other show, and I probably like it the least of any other show I rewatch because
Same. Every
it's not,
time I watch it, I like it less. And then I
yeah,
I was talking about my husband because we were both complaining about Ted, and he was like, "Why did we watch this show?" I said, "I used to love this show in college, and it's one
I
of those where I'm
know.
like, I kick myself. I'm like, why did I like this?"
I same girl, same. Like it's just one of those shows where I'm like, well, this does not stand up, and like all of them are terrible, and it's just
Yes.
not very fun. And like,
Mm-mm.
so yeah, I interesting take that I've been rewatching, but like you also know my other show I've been rewatching to fall asleep to is House.
Yeah.
And I just got to the Leighton Meester episodes. Do you remember those when she's like obsessed with House?
No.
And she's like a 17-year-old girl who's obsessed
Okay.
with House. And like at one point she like takes off her shirt for him to like feel her chest area. And it made me think about the fact that I've been watching ER. And I'm like, how were shows back then like a little bit more accurate? Because like in ER, a nurse has to be with the doctor at all times in the ER facility for like to make sure that he's treating the patients appropriately. And he's like, well, I asked them to be in here in certain situations. And I'm like, House is a terrible doctor. Like, he's
Right.
not like, that's what you're supposed to do. How did we get away from like showing people what it actually should look like if and like when it's not okay? Like, so, that's just a fun little note that I wanted to flag because I watched that
Yeah.
this morning and I'm like, how was he in a room alone with this girl who he knew like had a huge crush on him that was inappropriate alone? Like, he should have brought someone else in
I
there.
will say though, like I'm sure that this is maybe like a red flag people, but do you remember when they started like it was mandatory that an additional person had to be in the room with you at a doctor? Because I can honestly think back to like this maybe this was illegal. I have no idea. But I can remember going to the doctor like in high school or college and there not being a nurse in the room with me.
Right.
And
I
now
don't
when I go, there's always an additional person in there.
Yeah, I don't know. And like I had like a recent like I think my doctor had a nurse in there like when he was actually touching me and then like if
Hmm.
there was no actual interaction happening, we were alone in the room. But I don't know
I
when it
will say
happened.
that I have like my this is maybe TMI, but my gynecologist is a man
Hmm.
and he always brings a nurse in the room. And if it's just like us talking, he will often like send the nurse to go do something or the CNA or whoever it may be to go do something like, oh, schedule this appointment or whatever. But the way that their place is set up, they have like really long exam rooms where they're
Hmm.
like a lengthy type room. And so they'll leave the door open. So there's people walking by in the hall
Yeah.
in this place. So it's like a situation where like obviously the door is wide open so people would see if anything
Right.
inappropriate were happening. But also they can't hear you. So
Hmm.
it doesn't seem bad, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think that's
But
fair.
if
It's
there's
it's
any,
all a
like you said, if there's
spectrum.
any kind of touching or anything like that, any removal of clothes or anything, there's always another person in the room.
Which good. Like
Yeah,
great
and
that
I
we
mean,
put that
but
standard in there.
but I can remember like being in doctor's offices and there not being an additional
Right.
person. So I was like, wonder if this has always been a thing, if I was like part of something illegal or if
I know.
this is new. Like I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I would have to look into it, but uh and then for other things, I was at my sister's this weekend. Like I said, I was traveling. This week has been crazy. And my niece and nephew have been obsessed with the movie The Little Rascals.
Oh, I loved that movie.
I only got to watch the first hour of it before I had to go get pizza for everyone because it was
Sure.
my brother-in-law's birthday and like all those things like that. But oh my gosh, that movie is so I mean the child acting is terrible, but they're all like between the ages of 4 and 7. So I'm like,
They're
no,
so
they're
little.
so little, like Spanky when he's talking. I'm like,
Hmm.
there is a person off to the side feeding that child every line because
Yeah.
he will not remember. And it's so cute.
Yeah.
I adored it. And like my niece and nephew were like, do you remember anything of this? And I was like, dear Darla, you make me want to vomit. Like, and so
So
there are so
cute.
many parts of like do you got this down? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Like, they're so cute. Um, and then do you remember the froggy who like his voice was like
Oh yeah.
this? Yeah, yeah. It's such a
I
good,
haven't
cute
watched that
little
movie in
kid
a
movie.
long time, but I
Except
remember as a kid really liking that one.
except Alfalfa and Darla kiss 2 times within the first 10 minutes. And I was
Oh, I
like,
don't remember that.
let's
That seems like too
please not
much.
make these 4-year-olds kiss each other that often.
Yeah.
Or like 4 to 6-year-olds kiss that often. Like
Yeah, that seems like a lot,
I
honestly.
don't want to see that. And I get it when you're little, you're like, oh, they're playing at adults. Like that's the whole point. But like they were also children, and that's not great. Like I don't
Yeah,
want
like they're
them.
5. Like they don't need to do
Yeah,
that.
like how old is she? She was born in 1989. Yeah, she was 5. I'm like, please don't make the 5-year-old kiss someone.
Yeah,
Like
too
that's
much.
icky. And he, well, like, see, he was born in 1985 and it was 1994. So he was 9 kissing a 5-year-old girl. It's like, let's not make little kids do that.
Yeah.
You know, but that was my one note on it, that I didn't like the little children had to kiss. But yeah. So that is what I
I think it's
have.
hard with child actors, honestly, because like I know that I have been like critical of the little girl from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series where I'm like,
Mm,
the acting wasn't that great. And then I've heard other people that have been like, she was wonderful. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm just too hard on child actors.
oh no. Like the
But
acting
I'm
is
just like,
not good, but like who cares? It is a tiny little kid, you know.
yes. And
Uh
also just like I think sometimes you have to just like not be as critical and just be like, it's cute.
yes. And the He-Man Woman Haters Club. And I was like, oh, I like this. This is so cute. And let's not teach little boy. Like my nephew and I had a discussion about how we don't dislike Taylor Swift just because girls like her.
Yeah.
Like, fun stuff
I
like
need
that.
to have you
So
come have that discussion with some people that want to complain about her for no reason at my
are they?
work.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna be like
Just
above the age of
customers at
60.
my
Yeah,
work.
like
Yeah.
above the age of 60, where I'm like,
Hmm.
we don't just like someone just because girls like them. There's
If you
nothing
can name
wrong.
5 of her songs.
Can you tell me what her albums are and the order in which they came out? Because if you can't, then I just don't think you're like a real music fan. And
Yeah,
you're just not really like able to comment on her. And I was like talking to him and he's like, well, it just seems like all girls like her. And I was like, well, I actually don't
that's
really like
fine.
Taylor Swift songs, but that
But
doesn't
also it doesn't
mean
mean that it's bad if
bad. I go, but I also know that many people like her music and it's probably very good music. It's just not my taste.
also I
Like,
know a lot of men too that like Taylor
right.
Swift music,
And so,
so
I mean, he's 8, so like we can only
but
do so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Like, it was
I'm
small
not going to argue
conversations.
with an 8-year-old,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I did, but but we share blood, so I'm allowed to.
that's
So,
totally fine.
so just fun stuff like that. But and then for reading, I read another S.T. Gibson book. I read Evocation, which is number
Ooh,
1 in the Summoner Circle, which came out in 2024, not too long
okay.
ago. This is a book that follows 2 oh my gosh, I can never remember what they're called. I believe they're 2 wizards,
Okay.
and they had past relationship, and one of them starts to have weird, like he feels like he's been cursed and a ghost is after him type thing.
Mm. Okay.
And so he asks his ex-boyfriend to help. His ex-boyfriend is recently married to a woman who is a witch, and they kind of have a bad past together. I liked this book. I thought it was very cute. It was a good mystery.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun reading it. I did the audiobook and I thought the narrator had like good voices for each of them. I also thought it was like,
Sometimes narrators do not, so that's hit
yeah,
or
I know.
miss.
I also think that ST Gibson does a really good job. She has a lot of like more modern type beliefs. What like she writes a lot of occult books. We talked about the fact that I
Hmm.
read A Dowry of Blood by her. Um and I just think that like she does a really good job of being like, yeah, people who probably believe in the occult are probably not going to be like conservative people. Like they're probably going to
Sure.
believe in many different things, and like and so I thought she did a good job of like kind of mixing, different belief systems and different things. And like there's still like the old yard, like this takes place in Boston, near
Okay.
Harvard. And the man who like thinks he's being possessed or something is after him. He
Hmm.
comes from like old money. And so he's kind of like the old school wizard. And then his ex-boyfriend is someone who kind of is new and up and coming and still trying to work hard and like prove himself. And they have a lot of like arguments in that. And also, like, I just thought she did a really good job. One of the characters is a alcoholic, and she kind of talks about
Okay.
like she treats everything with a lot of respect and a lot of care, and I really
Mhm.
appreciate that. And also, like, looking into kind of what we talked about earlier, which is like non-traditional relationships and like
Mhm.
what that means. Like, a lot of people in the book are like, oh yeah, our marriage is open, or like sometimes it's open and sometimes it's
So it was
closed, and
fresh in
like
your mind.
yeah, so it was fresh in my mind, and I just think I'm like, yeah, that's interesting to like I wish people talked about these types of situations more because I think they're
Mm.
more normal than people expect.
Yep.
And if the people talked about it more, they would have better language to have the conversations that they need to
Mhm.
have. So like I really enjoyed that about her books. I thought this I liked it a lot more than I did A Dowry of Blood. And yeah, I thought she did a very good job with this one, and I recommend it if people are interested in like lighter occult mystery books. And
Okay.
it is available on many Hooplas. So if you have a Hoopla membership, go check out the audiobook for that because I thought it was a ton of fun and very LGBTQIA plus incorporated. So it was good, like gothic atmospheres and things like that. So
Oh,
definitely recommend. But should
is
we
that your
dive?
second of SD Gibson or is it the third?
Yes, that is my second of S.T. Gibson,
Okay.
but she has another book that is also on Hoopla. Right now, I'm listening to a podcast book on audio tape. Laura and I know we have to read an over 800-page book, so that is going to be my mainstay. But she also has another one that is on Hoopla that I will probably check out because I think she has really good audiobooks.
Mhm.
And they're a lot of fun. So, yeah, she's definitely been she does a lot of different things. So, yeah, highly recommend
Cool.
if you guys are looking for good audiobooks. All right, shall we talk about other hauntings other
Other
than
audiobooks.
ST? As a little bit more straight people audiobook slash occultist, because I would say that although Harry kind of
I
hints
mean,
at being a bi
kind of.
king,
Does he? I don't
no,
know.
I mean, I was
I feel
making a
like it's
joke,
all a
but there
joke.
have been two jokes where I was like, oh, is he saying that he'd be interested in men if,
No,
no,
he's
I don't.
definitely
No,
the
he is
no
the
homo. It's definitely him just making a joke of it, which is annoying. Ugh.
So again, we always caveat our wrap up episodes with this is us talking
These are
about the themes
bummers,
and characters. So these are bummers. We know these are romps of books. We know that they are fun and lighthearted and meant to be enjoyed. But this is the episode
but if you
that
have
we
to
do.
discuss everything, it's a bummer. And there's a lot of bummer things that happen in this book.
Yeah. So let's get out like the worst in my opinion of the bummers, which is the treatment of women in this novel. Um
Honestly, I still don't think that's the worst part. Harry is sexually
Oh,
assaulted.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Well, the sexual, I guess that's the better way to say it. And I apologize. The sexual assault in this novel,
Hmm.
um, because it's not good at all.
No,
It's very, very bad, and I do
it's
not think
honestly
it's
shocking that it happened.
yes, and happened so lacklusterly. Like Laura picked up
It's
on
a
it.
very throwaway moment.
And I really hope we see a better discussion of it in future novels.
Doubtful.
But I doubt it. I do not
Doubtful.
know. Yeah, it's not great.
I I don't know why it had to be included, honestly, is what kind of gets me because this Harry's been in situations before where like groups of people who he's been up against have beaten him up or whatever. But why did it have to be SA? Like, I don't understand why it was necessary, what it added to the story. And again, it's kind of a blink and you'll miss it thing. I picked up on it and was like, is this what happened? And I was unsure, but just some of the descriptions of things made me feel a little ick. And I had to confirm with Hannah that this is what had actually happened, but it just doesn't add anything to the story and it seems unnecessary.
and I kind of looked on Reddit and it looks like it's never really like honed in on or fully addressed, which I
Mhm.
also think is really like again,
Not
this is
great.
a horror novel and I think having real world stakes for your character is sometimes like a very good choice, especially when like not many people talk about men being raped and that does happen. And it is valid and it has a right to be shown in books, but like I'm very scared at the fact that like from looking at it, a lot of people had questions on if it happened. And like people talk about it overall in the series and they talk about like him having PTSD, but it's never really stated outright. And it's like, well, if you're going to have something like this happen, uh please look into it more. Please have like a
Yeah.
further discussion of it. Don't just like let it go, or just let it be something that like again, it doesn't have to be the full character.
Hmm.
People who have this happen to them are fully fledged humans who have many facets, but like it still is something that I wish there would have been like an actual moment to deal with it or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I still think I'm kind of falling back on the harmful assault and things that happen in books seems like it doesn't need to be there. And especially in a fantasy book, I just don't understand why it needed to be there because this immediately bypasses it. And I don't know. I think that Dresden is someone who already has a lot of trauma, and we don't know for sure all of the back history and everything yet at this point. There is the potential at this point in the series that this is something that could be talked about further on, but it sounds like from what you just briefly read that it's never touched upon again, which is not great. And so that makes me again just kind of fall back on what was the need to include this. I
Yeah. And it kind of goes into a lot of the darker details of this book that like I have a problem with because like you said, we kind of read this book out. I was reading this, or not you, but we I was reading this book out openly. And there were also a lot of problematic scenes when it comes to consent in this book
Mhm,
specifically. A lot of the lines of Thomas, who is the white vampire court or white court vampire, sorry.
mhm,
I'm sure he is white because it is a Harry Dresden novel. But like
mhm,
he has a moment with the Lydia, is it her name? Character
mhm.
where she is possessed and
Well, is it Lydia or is
or no,
it
it's
the other woman that is like his familiar that
no, no,
she has
no.
been taken and he wants to feed off of her
Well, I want to definitely talk about
without
Justine as well, but
Justine? Yeah.
Lydia, there's a moment where Lydia is possessed
Oh
and
yes, and in the
Thomas is in the
van.
shower. No, no, no. Thomas is in the shower
Oh.
and he comes in on Harry being attacked by Lydia and he
Mm,
starts licking Lydia. And the way it is described is also ways that, like you and I have described, the women who are often quote unquote monstrous in this book being hypersexualized,
yeah.
where they're like humping Harry or they're humping someone else as like bad things are going on. And we point out that it's
Mm,
always the women. But in this case, um, Thomas starts licking Lydia, which we find out that like vampire venom is almost like a drug. And
it's
so
like a
then
hallucinogen.
she
Yeah, hallucinogen or
and
something.
she starts to obviously want to have sex with him because of this hallucinogen. Like that is what the hallucinogenic
Hmm.
drug does. And the way it's described in this novel feels like it is supposed to be titillating that this is happening. And this is a person who literally has zero control over their body in this moment. They are possessed and they
Hmm.
are being controlled by a vampire. And I just really hated the description of that. Like, we get zero description of
Yeah,
the realities of what happened to Harry. But when it comes to this moment
this
where we're
woman.
actually seeing someone be violated, it is very much like told from the like, ooh, look at this sexy moment
Hmm.
happening. And it's not sexy, it's gross.
Hmm.
And there is a lack of consent there. And Harry like breaks it up, but like, and so you know that Harry does not agree with what Thomas is doing, but Harry almost doesn't agree with it because Thomas is a vampire.
Because he's disgusted by Thomas as what
Yeah,
he is.
not that like this is a person who cannot consent. And like,
Right.
again, he lets Bob out a lot of times when he knows what Bob does when he is out and
Hmm.
about. And he kind of is like, well, we negotiated, so I have to let him out. And it's like, no, you didn't. Like, you
Yeah.
chose to do that. And that's, and I also like along the lines of Justine with the Thomas character, while we're still on them, I found this great post on Tumblr I can send it to you and the
You
show
can read it.
notes. But it is talking about some of the issues, and they said, all the way to the third book in the series, Grave Peril. During this book, Harry sees a white court vampire named Thomas, at a party with a human girl who is mostly naked. That girl's name is Justine. She's being mind controlled by Thomas to always want to be with him, even though every time they bang, he could lose control and kill her. Nobody in the books ever calls this rape. Justine, it should be noted, is at most 20 years old in the book, and it is stated possibly younger. We
Mm-hmm.
later find out that she met Thomas while working illegally in a sex club several years before this, when she was at most 16 years old and could have been 15, and was a
Mm-hmm.
teenage runaway. So the kind of person a predator would love to target. Thomas was an adult at the time he met Justine. I can't find his exact age, but he's older than Harry, so he would have been a good 10 years or more older than Justine, probably
Mm-hmm.
much more. Harry and Justine are gang raped. Of course, nobody ever calls it this in the books. During Grave Peril, by a bunch of violent Red Court vampires. Justine, we find out during this, has unspecified mental illnesses, which Thomas's sex magic somehow keeps managed. Once she's away from him for a few hours, their control erodes and she turns into an Ophelia cliche. At the end of Grave Peril, Thomas sends Justine naked except for a ribbon bow to Harry's door. This is all 3 days after Justine and Harry have been gang raped. Thomas just decides to pimp Justine out to Harry as a thank you for his work. Thomas is, remember, psychically controlling Justine to be in love with him and do whatever he says/wants, and managing her unspecified mental illness for her. Nobody ever calls this rape in the book. Harry seems to find this to be like a joke or kind of amusing after the hellish few days he's been through. He doesn't react or reach out to connect with a fellow survivor with whom he was in the room with during their simultaneous assaults. He doesn't try to get Justine away from Thomas. He doesn't find their relationship repugnant or horrifying. And so, that is in this book specifically. It
Mm-hmm.
is not great. And yeah, that is kind of what we're talking about
Mhm.
in this book specifically. So, um,
Yeah, all of that is a
yeah,
lot. Uh, like,
yeah.
it's hard to even like kind of know where to go with
I think it's just
this,
important
really.
to
It's
know.
just like this. I don't think that we should be condoning like sexual assault and the lack of consent for entertainment
No,
in media. And I think you and I both are in agreement on that, that sometimes that it just happens in media for entertainment's sake, and that's horrible.
and I do
And
think we can, like, I know a lot of people love these books and they're very important to a lot of people, and so we do not mean to detract from that. And I also
mhm,
recognize that this book was a book written 23 years ago, and we have had a lot more discussions. I think if we watched a lot of media back in 2001, the way it handled rape or consent would have been murky at best
mhm.
in a lot of
Yeah.
scenarios. So we're not trying to say that if you enjoy these books or if they mean something to you, that, like, again, it goes back to Laura and I were talking about this off mic, but there were certain books that I do not love, that, like, if it's not actively harmful, if you can read and
Hmm.
be an adult about it, I do not think, like, you shouldn't consume something just because, like, one other
Correct.
person finds it rude or things like that. But what we want to talk about is the fact that this book does not seem to address it. And if we're talking about the
Hmm.
themes and realities of these books, then it is something
Hmm.
to touch on. Now, I do think Jim Butcher does, like, feel sympathy for what happened to Justine and Harry in the moment in the Red Court, but I
Hmm.
think that there is a weird level of gray when it comes to the Justine character that gets hand waved away because she has mental health issues,
Yeah.
and because she quote unquote loves Thomas without any recognition that that love comes through a lot of non-consensual things, and, like, there are people who love people who can harm them, and so
Hmm.
that is all relevant to talk about, and, like, those are the worst parts of the novel. So that's kind of why we're pointing it out first. So
Hmm.
and I think that that's kind of, we can put kind of a full circle on that,
Yeah.
unless you have any final notes other than
You know,
that.
I
But
I don't have anything else to add to it, honestly. It's just a really low point in the book is all of this.
yeah, What are your feelings on Michael?
Don't prefer
Don't
Michael.
prefer. I
Um,
don't. Yeah.
Not a fan. He's extremely condescending, gives up on his family to follow
Harry Dresden.
Harry Dresden. I always want to just call him Jim Butcher.
We do not think they're the same person. We understand
No,
that there is a difference, but
I also
uh
I get it so mixed up. But
I
yeah,
know.
just I can't get over Michael and his whole like, well, you gotta tell her you love her. Well, you gotta don't say that bad word, and oh, you gotta do that, you gotta do that, and just like, oh, shut up.
I'm sorry.
But
He
then he
left
can ditch his wife, his
his
injured wife, and his infant son, who is
dying infant son, his
yeah, it
infant
was
son who
very
will not
sick.
like I don't know. And again, I know that like some like not all men I'm going to say, but like some men have a harder time making a connection with like a newborn child or like a child who like this is happening to because like yeah, for like
Well, he did not even give it an
but
opportunity.
he did
He
not
was
give it
like,
an
Father
opportunity.
Hill's here. See ya.
I have a babysitter. That's my duty, right? And it's like, no,
Oh,
and like, I'm sorry, I don't know how Charity didn't leave him at the end of this book.
right.
Like, and she okayed the naming of her son after a man who she
Who
does not
she
respect and
hates,
like. That's so
which was
it's
weird. Like, she doesn't, she's not a fan of Harry.
and she has every right not to be like her husband like well she should like her husband honestly she lets him get
You
off
would
way too
think
easy.
that she should like her
I'm
husband,
gonna say
but
this on record. If my baby was dying and my husband was like, I'm the only one who could save the world, I think I
like,
would be
get back
like,
here.
I'm almost positive someone else could. Like I'm
There's
I'm
got to be
almost
another person.
positive there is one other
Where's Karen
person.
Murphy?
Right, well, she's in the hospital because she got attacked by a nightmare.
Fine, recruit Susan.
I mean, now she's a vampire, so I'm
Well,
sure
then
she
she's
will be
got lots of
recruited in
skills.
future novels. So, uh, yeah, I don't understand that plot point other than like, I'm not sure Jim Butcher had children at that time, because
Also,
like,
it just seems odd that Michael's character is the way that he is. Like, obviously, there's like all these connotations of like, yeah, he's like
an
similar to
angel,
an angel. He's got the best soul ever. He's a protector with a sword, and like
a sword
Saint
given to
Michael,
him
the
by
archangel.
God, and
Yeah,
God, and I also like, I don't know, it just has very old school vibes of like, and again, 2001, I understand, we can
yeah,
keep
but
harking on it, but
still,
like,
I think even at that time, people would read this as like, yeah, this is a weird
the
character.
belief that like God calls him to do better, so he has to leave his dying wife. And I'm like, fine, I guess that happens in the Bible
Yeah,
sometimes, but
I
boy, does it
don't
suck
know.
reading about it when he's supposed to be this bastion of goodness. Like,
I think it's especially hard to take yourself out of it when it's like, yeah, but to chase down a bunch of vampires, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. It just stinks.
Michael is not a favorite. I'm disappointed because it's like this character is probably in it for the long haul in this series. I don't picture him going anywhere because he
No.
and Dresden seem like besties. And I'm
Well,
just like,
Harry tells you they're pretty much best
ugh.
friends, and he stood by Harry's bedside for days. And this is the weirdest part of this book to me. A lot of it narratively does not make sense to me. Because like one of the reasons Michael gives Harry for staying by his bedside for days was to make sure he's watching over Harry to protect him because the vampires might come after him. Why were they in Harry's house then?
I was just say, how could they get in? I thought they had to have an invite.
Well, like they said like some vampires could possibly get into Harry's house, like because even through the wards and stuff, like
Okay.
his magic might be wonky, da 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 da. Da. But then I'm like, then hide him in a better location. Like
Right.
if you can't hide him in a church, like it seems like churches are pretty hard for them to break into, so why not just hide him there?
It's
Like there
weird
are
because like loopholes are so it's like so easy to poke holes in some of these things and like loopholes are utilized to the utmost in this
yes,
series, which makes it confusing. But then at the same time, we're supposed to just be like, no, just it's fantasy. Just let it go.
hand
It's
wave it
like
away,
I
I
I
guess.
can't though because I'm confused.
I just don't know why they were hiding in Harry's place of like a
Yeah.
home. Like this doesn't make
Get out of
sense
that
because
shag apartment.
get out of that shack So that didn't make sense to me. A lot of Michael's character doesn't make sense to me because he's just there to point out that like a lot of stuff happens off the page in these books, which is also very normal for these types of books
I
back in
feel
the
like,
early 2000s.
do you think the purpose of this character is supposed to be like, so Harry's constantly calling himself like such a moral like a moral good person. He's the best, you know. Is this supposed to be like an exaggeration upon that where it's like he's literally like the angel that sits upon the shoulder and then there's a devil that sits upon the other shoulder that we haven't met yet?
I
Like
don't know
I
because
don't
Harry also talks about how he's not a good guy and he, like it's wanting to have to eat your cake and have it too, to be like Harry thinks he's
yeah,
such a good guy, but he's also bad news. Like that happens in a lot of like the media that came out around this time.
I
So I don't think
suppose.
it's like rare for this to happen, but I do think Michael is supposed to be this. I think Michael is unfortunately what the author wants us to believe Murphy is without any of the time spent with Murphy or context of Murphy. Like
Yeah, and
that's
that's
what
another thing
frustrates
that
me.
yeah, that's another thing honestly that makes Michael a worse character is because we've spent so little time getting to know him and we're just immediately thrown into them being in a battle and him being like, "Don't cuss. Let's say a
And
prayer real quick." And I'm like, "Come on."
I just think that like his this character would have been better served to have just been Murphy then. Like
Yeah.
have it be the female detective who we already know, who we already know is a rule follower, who is already a stickler. Like then like
But
I
this gets
understand.
even worse where it's like Karen Murphy's character so far hasn't come off as like kind of condescending in the way that Michael does. I don't know. Like the way that he talks about his relationship and everything with Susan, I just hated.
I know.
And I was just like, please do not impose your beliefs
Well,
upon him. Like, stop.
I also think that he's just supposed to like again, I think this book narratively does not make sense because we are told so much and not shown anything. Like
Hmm.
we are told time and time again how, and we bring this up every single podcast episode, mark it off as your free bingo spot. But we're told so often that Karen Murphy is good for Chicago.
She's the only thing
And
holding this town together.
honestly, we never get to see it. Like it brings back to like I wanted the book that happened before this that we didn't get to see where they took down the evil big bad because like I honestly did not
Here's
care
the
that
thing though,
he
Hannah.
came back as a ghost.
I
Like
think we are seeing it because the reason that he thinks that Karen Murphy's so good for Chicago is because she hires him.
I
Like
know,
I
but that's the thing is like we get told so often that she's so good and she's so great and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, well, it sounds like in the book we never got, Karen got to do a bunch of detective work with Harry and Michael, and they all had this final showdown with this guy, and it was so bad and so good and so great. And then now he's come back to haunt them, and I'm like, but we should have gotten the book
but
where they
why?
hunted him down because I don't care that he's come back to
Hmm.
haunt him because this is the first time we have been introduced to this character.
Yeah.
And like it made zero sense because then he was like, well, it's not him, it's the demon that he called. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense for like why we never met him. But then we find out, no, he was the ghost all along. Like it's like the John
Miss
Mulaney
Agatha
sketch where
all
yeah,
along.
or like John Mulaney, where he was like, my mom used to put me in a nightshirt, and she had said that she saw a ghost, and he was like, did you ever see a ghost, or was it me in a nightshirt all along? And I'm like, yeah, it was just him in a nightshirt all along. Like, that's it. And it just doesn't make sense, and I don't like it, and I don't get it. Like,
Yeah, I agree though too. Like it's hard to care about that backstory even because we just have spent so little time with him that it's just like, okay, cool. Like who cares because we don't like Michael at this point. He's annoying.
yeah. And like if we had been introduced to him in book 3.5 where they were trying to
Hmm.
hunt down this guy and he's like helping them out do research and he, his wife is at the beginning of her pregnancy, but like there's a little bit more discussion of like what their roles are and what the agreement is that he is a hand of God, so he has to do certain
Hmm.
things. But we never get to see any of the work, and I feel like that's the problem is we're not seeing enough of the work on the page for what we are
That
told in the book.
that's exactly right because I think that's maybe the reason that it becomes so frustrating is like I think you and I both could maybe get on board with the character a little more if it was something where we understood the motivations
Yes.
behind him, but we don't understand. And it doesn't make sense as to why we're supposed to just immediately get on board, besides just knowing that Harry did a soul gaze and saw that he has the
Yeah.
best soul in the world. And
And
then we're shown like how he ditches his family to help Harry
yeah.
Dresden. Like, that doesn't seem like the best soul in the world, or how he immediately is like, let's kill this vampire. Like, okay,
Right.
what? Well, you're the best
Yeah.
soul in the world. Okay.
Well, and that's my thing is just like it feels very strange to read these books. And I'm sure someone's gonna like get in the comments and be like, it's because Harry's an unreliable narrator. And I'm like, okay, but it's still a choice to like not have that in between book
Yeah.
and give us this and not let us like see them all in action together and never let us see Murphy do any detective work outside of literally arresting Harry.
Yep.
Like those are all choices that you're making that like we could still like again we just talked about How I Met Your Mother. When you rewatch it, at some point you do accept that Ted Mosey is an unreliable
Mm.
narrator and you cannot trust him as far as you can throw him. But there are still some moments where the secret is out and he is treated like the douchebag he
Yep.
actually is. And that's good, but like I feel like that doesn't happen with Harry as this character. We
No.
never get to see how kind the other characters are outside of him telling us that they're good because he likes them.
And it's also, it does take away from the book, honestly, a little
Yeah.
bit. It takes away from the other characters more than anything,
Mhm.
because we're only getting this very biased POV. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's a record scratch, and then you got Bob coming in with his
Not a fan.
actually, I don't like Bob as a character, but I did like if it were a different character doing this, I liked Bob's role in this book where he's
Hmm.
just like just the encyclopedia for them.
Bob is
Um,
just the exposition dumps for
yes.
us, because he was in the last one where he told us all about, like, the Loup-Garous, the
Loup-Garous,
Loop
yeah.
Buffaloes,
The
all them.
Loop buffaloes. Exactly.
But then there's also just like the cringiest moments that happen with Bob, and I'm just like, oh. Because what was
Where
it he
he
was doing
wants to
in this, where he
he
went
wanted
to
to
like a girl's locker
watch
room or something?
oh, well, that happened, but he also wanted to watch Harry and Susan have
Yes, that's what
sex.
it is.
Ugh.
That No.
And
Mm-mm.
Harry's like, nobody. And I'm like, okay, but like Harry will let Bob do it. Like again, it's like
But be madder about this.
it's
Like,
the belief that like, well, he's my friend and he's never done anything to me. And it's like, well, every single girl you've met has says that he makes her physically uncomfortable. So
yeah,
maybe that's the problem.
take a deeper
Like,
look.
yeah, have some questions, my guy. Because like,
Hmm.
and I mean, obviously Harry does not always condone Bob's actions, but the problem is like Harry still hangs out with all these people who do these things and like gives us the belief that they might be okay guys. And it's like, but they're
Yeah.
not. Like,
How
yeah.
did you feel about like Michael's wife's whole situation?
I mean, I really hated everything about what they did to
Same,
her.
same.
Um, that was
I
horrifying
found
and
it
disgusting.
awful.
Yeah.
And
Um,
honestly, the more we're talking about this, I'm like, I guess I need to change my Goodreads rating, because like I gave this 3 stars, but like the more I'm starting to think about this, I'm like, there are a lot of really horrendous things that happen in this book.
yeah, I really thought it was disgusting to further the plot on the back of a pregnant woman being attacked and being on death's door
Hmm.
for this character that all we hear about her is she's kind of a shrill. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
How
you
dare she not enjoy being at home with all 20 kids when her husband Michael is out saving Chicago with Harry Dresden?
and Harry's such a good guy if you just really just give him a chance. And that's the thing is like this is a married woman who probably doesn't like Harry because he's kind of awful
Yeah.
and he hasn't grown up yet and like her husband it sounds like he's in
It's
his 30s hanging out with a
gone a lot.
24-year-old who has shitty views about women. Like so
Hmm.
yeah, I wouldn't be thrilled by my husband having that friend either.
Same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just felt like there were so many situations in this book where the women were just there to push the plot along and had crappy things happen to them, which was really unfortunate.
Well, and especially you and I spoke about infertility earlier in this episode.
Hmm.
Um, obviously, it sounds they made so many jokes about how many children Michael and Charity have.
Hmm.
Um, and those names, like they were born to be characters in this book, but um to use someone's infertility as a plot point to move the plot forward is
Yeah.
also very gross.
Yeah.
Especially when like we do not know if they plan to have it kind of feels they're like, well, it can't be that bad because they have so many other children.
Yeah.
It could
No,
be uniquely
secondary
awful.
secondary infertility is bad.
Yeah,
like uh, I hate that there's I don't know.
it's all
I hate that
uniquely
this even
awful.
yeah,
Like,
it's all awful. I hate
yeah.
that there's this idea that just because they have other kids that they wouldn't be mortified by the fact that she now is infertile due to a traumatic injury.
Yeah, like that put her in danger of dying when her husband
And
wasn't
her
there for her.
infant.
Yes. Like, and that's also a huge thing is like a lot of women who lose babies in horrific experiences, if they were to have lost that baby, all she knows is her husband was not there with her in her final days, and she cannot ever have the opportunity to have
Mhm.
any more children, and that will be her last experience like with that
Yep.
unique experience. And it's just gross to kind of just do it off the page. And
Yeah.
I know we do not talk about women and their health journeys and their fertility journeys enough, and it
Here's
needs to
the
be
thing,
talked
this
about
was a
more, but this
very
was not.
inappropriate way to handle this. Like I absolutely want to have more like we talked about this a lot when I was ranting about Bridgerton
Yes.
at the end of Bridgerton, and there are specific ways to handle these type of storylines. This is not the place where we need an infertility journey mentioned, and
No.
it was handled extremely poorly.
So there a lot of this is the 2000s of it all. We get it, but we are two women talking about this from the perspective of
But I think
2024
you
and
mentioned that like
like
Sex in the City, they covered
yeah.
this, and this would have been the 2000s as well, where they
Yeah.
covered an infertility storyline. So it can be done, people.
It can be done. And it can be done by men. We're not saying it can't be, but it has to have some more nuance than it's okay. She already had other babies. And like, oh yeah. I really
And
hated that
also just
storyline.
like the idea of it like occurring the way that it did was really gross to me too. I hate that it was like this traumatic incident, and I don't know. I feel like that also kind of
Well, and I do
takes away
know,
from a lot of people's experience too, where I shouldn't say takes away from people's experience, but it kind of minimizes the experiences of people who are dealing with infertility and they have done nothing but experience infertility nonetheless. Like someone can have 5 kids and experience infertility having changed nothing.
yep,
And someone can experience infertility having lived the healthiest of lives, never smoking, never doing any kind of thing that would infer that they would have any kind of issue. And this is kind of honestly, it makes me feel a little icky that it's like she became infertile via injury. I'm not saying this can't happen, but
no.
it just seems extreme and very traumatic and a little bit like it takes away from
Well,
people I shouldn't even say that it takes away from people. It kind of makes it seem like he doesn't understand how a lot of people come to be uh, struggling with their fertility, and a lot of it is just unexplained.
well,
Like so much of it is unexplained. It doesn't have to always be a just big traumatic thing.
well, and that's the thing is I think there's that. And I will give I
I do
I'm
want to give him a little bit of benefit
uh,
of the doubt because
yes.
I'm not saying that he has absolutely no familiarity with infertility or anything like that. I can't say that. I don't know. But just the way that this is written and just from my own personal experience, it feels a little icky. And it just feels icky that this was even a storyline in this at all.
Yes. And the thing is I do know that like some of these books have been described to me as monsters of the week. And I do think with similar like TV shows I watched growing up, I used to be a huge monster of the week girly. I watched Smallville, I watched Charmed, I watched all of them. So I can say that I do know, and like even Buffy watching it nowadays, when I know the context with which it was created, a lot of these types of storylines did happen, and they did kind of happen flippantly where like someone finds out that they did this and then it's just kind of moved on with. So I'm not even saying like Jim Butcher is the only one who's ever done this.
No, that's absolutely not true. And
Right.
I'm not
Neither
trying to
one of
say
us
that
is saying that.
that
Like,
and also again, we don't know his situation, so we don't know what his experience is with this in particular. And some people may express maybe he has undergone something himself. We
and even
don't
if he
know.
didn't, I want it to be like, and both of us are saying this, so like, not to put words in your mouth, but I think we're on the same page. Like, we understand that Jim Butcher did not walk into this hoping to write the best representation of,
Absolutely, yeah.
women or he wanted to write a fun book about a wizard in the city of
Yeah.
some Chicago out there, not the one I lived in. But like that is fine. He gets to write those, but sometimes when you want to write those, you rewatch them and you think, ooh, so like there are episodes
I
that
do
we
think that you can
yeah,
have an idea about something and it can be misguided. Like
yes.
he definitely I would say that due to the success of this series that obviously these books have resonated with people. I do think that there are a lot of things that hit for the series, but I think that this is maybe a storyline particularly in this book that definitely misses for
Yes.
both of us
For
for
both of
sure.
us. Yes. And so that's like how I kind of, and I guess that's,
And
I
again, we
definitely,
don't
yeah,
know his experience. We don't know his personal life, his personal experience. He may have a greater understanding of this than we know. I can only speak to my own personal experience, and I do deal with this personally. So I can say that just as someone who has gone through this, it felt really icky and
yeah,
hard to read. And it did kind of feel icky that it had to be like a diminishing of someone who had a lot of kids and
yeah,
also a thing where it was a traumatic experience which caused this when
right,
many times it is caused
right.
by unexplained issues.
And at
So,
least, at least this was not a character who sounds like a throwaway character. So they didn't just do this to a person
yeah.
who leaves and is never to be seen again.
Hmm.
So I am glad of that, that it wasn't just like some person that
I
we
will say though
got
that
whipped into
it
to show their
does seem like
trauma.
a
Like,
problematic relationship, honestly.
yeah,
So I'm not particularly looking forward to this in the future. But it's oh, okay. She's still here.
she's still here. Yeah, and at least at least it seems like Michael was very saddened by this news. Like it was treated
Hmm.
flippantly in the fact that like he did not stay with her. But it did seem like he too was grieving the fact that they had lost this opportunity together, and like
Hmm.
this got taken away from them. So I do appreciate that Dresden seemed to have uh kind of shown that, or Dresden, I did it. Butcher
Butchered.
showed
Yeah.
that through the perspective of a dad who is also upset by that, because I think sometimes we don't always show
Yeah.
a man having those feelings. So, bare minimum, I just wish it hadn't been done at the expense
I
of
There's
Charity's
just a
character.
lot of things, honestly, that I would like to pluck from this book,
Yes.
and the book would still make sense. And
Hmm.
this is one of them.
Yes.
And it, uh, yeah, I questioned the editing a little bit because I'm like,
Yeah.
this,
This was a mess.
this doesn't flow the best. This has a lot of things that didn't seem necessary to the book, to the
Yeah.
plot. And I kind of wonder, like, when they were reading this, like, is this the narrowed down version? Like, how many additional plots were here? Because you have like all these different layers of things happening. Like, even when we're talking just generally of how it starts with like kind of a ghost story and we're in, the haunted hospital.
I
And
loved that part of the book. I thought that was so
that was cool.
interesting. That was so cool. I wanted the entire book to be about that. And then they were like, why don't we do a retrospective of all the trauma that Harry has had, that he does not have the mental capacity to address, and then we're going to make it about vampires and some guy we've never met before.
Yeah, it just didn't it didn't seem to really like I can trace it as I'm thinking about it now where I'm like, okay, so they started off here and then they go to the Never Never following that ghost and then the godmother hooks up with them and then the godmother kind of follows them back. They like help Karen and then somehow they get involved with vampires and there's still this woman Lydia and she gets captured and I'm like it's just a lot that it just doesn't necessarily need to all tie together and it could have been whittled down a lot.
Right? Yeah.
Really questioning it. And then there's all the Susan of it all where it's that seemed strange too.
I
And
mean, she just
I
feels like
I
she's not a character.
I don't know that I necessarily like hate her becoming a vampire. That's not what I'm getting at.
No.
I just wonder why it had to happen so fast
Yeah.
because this is the third book and it was like the vampire stuff didn't seem necessary to this book that it could have been more about like the Never Never and the ghosts and the cemetery thing
Mm-hmm.
and made that more interesting. And also that was where some of Butcher's prose was a little better too, where he kind of gets a little bit introspective on things. And I'm like, oh yeah, he is a great writer when he starts to talk about those type of things. But then when we get a little more involved in the plot and it's like we bring in vampires and it has to become a little more convoluted, I'm like, you're losing me. And then
Yeah.
when we have to rush it along and make Susan a vampire after this party, I'm just like, it's not that this couldn't happen in an urban fantasy. It's just confusing as to why it had to happen right here.
Yes.
I don't know. And again, it's an maybe an issue of like he doesn't know how many books he's gonna get when he's writing this series, you know, or maybe he had a contract for three and so he's trying to like push everything into three. I don't know the situation for
Yeah.
sure, but it does when we're sitting in the year of 2024 and we're reading this book, which is like 3 of 25 or however many there are, it's a lot. Maybe not 25, but there's a
Yes.
lot of them. It seems odd that this was scrunched all into book 3 when it seems like the Susan becoming a vampire could have been maybe even a book all in itself, all about vampires.
It feels like between books 1 through 3, we almost needed like 5 books
Kind
to
of,
really
yeah.
delve
I
into the
mean, I'm a
actual.
little more forgiving of book 1 just
Yeah.
because it's a debut and we're trying to introduce all these different things. But books 2 and 3 really didn't need to include as many storylines as they had.
Yep.
So I don't know.
I really believe that I think there could have been a like 1.5, a
Mhm.
2.5, and like a 2.75 where we actually got like some of the Susan and Harry storylines and stuff.
Yeah.
Because like, and I understand like this is a very big trope in the 2000s. A lot of books fast forward in time and then they just catch us up because like that
Mhm.
was just how the timelines work. So, but like when we're reading this, it's just confusing to kind of get
It
like,
is.
oh, Susan and him are in love, but also they can't be together, but also he's going to propose to her during like the worst possible moment. And like it just feels a little
And also, if we
yeah,
break it down just more simply, like it is very confusing as like I questioned in the last episode, like, so what's the situation? Is she a vampire? Like, how, like, it's hard to understand.
right, exactly.
There's so much
So
going on.
I'm sure it was in some kind of exposition dump that we weren't fully paying attention to, like what happens based on
I
like if
guess
you get
maybe it's some
bitten,
of
but
me listening to the audiobook and not
I don't
having good
know.
enough notes,
Paul
but I
didn't read
kind of
me
doubt
the
it.
book well enough. Like I don't
Oh,
know. Paul, blame Paul. So like I do think that this book was just a little bit of a mess for me personally. The
how do
Susan
we feel about
storyline.
uh Dresden at this point? Like has your opinion of him better changed or like have you how do you feel about him?
I think I just feel like he's finally Harry Dresden the protagonist, honestly. Like it feels like these 3 books are prequels to what we're going to see. Like on that like this is the like we've heard about how he was unlucky in love and his last girlfriend died because of Justin, you know,
Elaine.
Elaine, but it actually feels like this is like going to be the sad love of his life storyline that we're going to care about for the most of it. And I'm like, okay, so I guess we have now completed the trilogy of the Harry Dresden backstory. So we have a folk, and like that, that definitely feels that way with the like the White Council is coming. And so it feels like Harry Dresden, the protagonist, has finally entered the chat. And that is where we will be going from here on out. Is we know why he's sad boy. We know that his girlfriend can't be with him because she doesn't trust herself. And
So
we
you think
know,
like the books 1 through 3 were all like the backstory reveal, and then there's like start of book 4, it's like record scratch where we jumping in. It's like, so like I was saying,
I kind of feel like that might be what happens because it feels
Yeah.
like the last 3 books don't really have any cohesive structure to them.
No.
And I also know that like we said, this is probably when Jim Butcher was trying to see how far he could take the Dresden Files.
Mhm.
And it probably starts picking up as like, nope, this will be a series that lasts for a very long time. And maybe it will always be a series that like we get brought back to our starting line position.
Mhm.
Like there are stories that do that, and Harry Dresden
Yeah.
could definitely be one of them. But it does feel like we're actually getting some movement to the overall narrative by setting up the Michael character, by setting up a little bit more of Susan's character. Like we're actually getting background characters in play,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
before they were kind of just set dressing that could have died in any book, you know?
Yeah. I think I still hate Harry. I I I don't enjoy a character who's constantly kind of patting himself on the back,
Yeah.
which he does a lot of. And
No, he's just the best, Laura.
yeah,
That's what you're missing.
there's still just so much misogyny
Yeah.
in this too that is just difficult to overlook. I don't even need to get into it. You guys read the book, you know. But it's it's also just like you're mentioning like, oh, I think there's like this overarching thing that we're kind of getting into. I don't know if I'm convinced that that's happening yet. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
and it's like we're setting up a lot of like trauma and things for Harry that I'm like, are we going to get into this? Like this could be something that is actually maybe really profound
Yeah.
and could be somewhat meaningful if we are able to get there, but it's hard to say considering the whiplash that this
Yeah.
book is giving. And I don't know. I just feel really conflicted on his character, and I it's becoming harder for me to just like be like, well, he's young. He's young. 3 books in, and
Yeah.
I don't know. And I didn't appreciate a lot of the things that happened to him. I don't appreciate like his brand of humor too much.
Yeah.
And I it's it's a difficult character to like at this point. Like
I've al-
I don't know. And I'm curious to see where the next book goes because if this was the book that they mentioned like
this
briefly in
is
the
the
intro,
turning
like
point.
this is the turning point where people really say the series starts to pick up. I'm like, this is or the next book is good. Like
This was the
which
setup for the
this
next
is the
book being
setup
good
for a
of.
good book. Like and so
Yeah.
it makes me a little confused as to like what's to come even. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about that. But
Ugh.
Harry, I'm still not on board with Harry. Uh yeah, none of the women in this book really were fun to read, and that
No.
sucks. And it's just a lot of misogyny, a lot of things that were bad, bad, bad that happened and didn't need to be there.
Yeah. Um, and guys, we are, I believe, halfway through the first part of season 6 now, aren't we?
Yes,
Yeah.
the first
So
part of it.
we've
We're gonna
covered
come back, but
yeah, we're obviously going to read all of the books in the Dresden Files, but we are
there's a
only
lot of them,
covering
so
the
we need a
first
break.
6. So this is it, guys. We're hitting halfway through. We are
Halfway.
going to cover 4, 5, and 6 in the upcoming months. We have some great bonus content on the line for you guys during that time,
Yes.
so please keep an eye out for that. Hopefully, a little bit more lighthearted stuff, including next week's wonderful interview with Jonathan Navarre.
Yay! That was so
Oh
amazing.
my gosh, it was amazing. He's the nicest person I've ever met.
I love Jonathan.
Um,
I'm so glad that I didn't like pass out or something. I was so excited to talk with him.
He was so sweet to us. He was very nice to me when I was dealing with a little bit of a family emergency, so he had rescheduled for us. So this was a long time in the making, and we really appreciate him. But we talked to him about the Agent Renault series, and Laura asked some questions about the Windtide series because she is a mega
Yes.
fan of his. So
I
please
am Jonathan Navarre's super fan. fan.
Please make sure you're watching out for that and some of the other amazing content that is up on ourpod.com right now. So please go over to check out our reading schedule. We have a ton of stuff up
Yes.
there for you to help you prepare. Please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and to join us on Discord, where we do a little bit more of a breakdown of these books, like with people who are talking to us about the chat or about, the episode chat and everything, or just things we've been reading, watching, and or enjoying. It's a ton of fun to go over to our Discord, so please enter over there. You can also subscribe to our Patreon or just follow us on all the social platforms at OWWR Pod. We really
Come
appreciate
talk
you
to me about
all.
Marvel on Discord.
We are really sorry that this was a little bit of a bummer episode, but we do want
Yeah.
to, focus on these important topics because we really do find them important, and we hope that
It's a
you guys kind of.
disservice to not talk about it.
Yes. And we know, I accidentally saw some spoilers. I am the person who saw spoilers. So if you have any spoilers, dump them on me and don't bring them to Laura, because usually I filter those out so that we can have one person always reacting in time. So please make sure you're doing that. But we really appreciate you all, and we hope you continue to
Yeah.
join us on this journey.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks for being
everyone.
here.
Bye.
Bye.